Hi, I'm Reka. Welcome to Art for the Soul. In this episode, I am going to show you how to fill up a sketchbook page with some shapes, doodles, and just using a few simple supplies like watercolor, a pencil, eraser, some markers, some fine liners. And this is a really great way to just immerse yourself in a creative process and just, really enjoy it and not think too much about the details. Just kind of go with the flow, enjoy the process, and you'll find it's just very meditative, fun, and enjoying. So let's dive in. So here's an overview of what I will be showing you today in today's video. So you can see that I'm filling my sketchbook page with a shape, and in this case it's an ice cream cone, and then I've just doodled within the ice cream cone, and it's just very random. I didn't put a lot of thought into it. I just doodled whatever came to my mind in that moment, and then I added color with watercolor paints and markers, and I did some embellishments with the gold paint and the gold gel pens and some white gel pens as well. Those are additional. You don't have to use the gold gel pen and the white gel pen. I just really do love using it, but really you just need the watercolor paints and some markers and a pencil to kind of get started in this. So here's one example, and here this shape is the ice cream cone, but you could really start even simpler. You could just do a rectangle or a square or a triangle or a circle. It doesn't even have to be as elaborate as an ice cream cone. So just, start simple or whatever is at your comfort level. So the whole point is you don't want to stress about this. You just want to really enjoy the whole creative process and the creative activity. So here's another example of how I filled in this sketchbook page. This is a Montserrat leaf. I think that's how you pronounce it. And I first sketched it out in pencil, and then I outlined it with a fine liner, and then I filled it in with some first watercolor paint, and then I doodled with my pencil all the little elements that I wanted to do. Then I added the watercolor paint. And then I went in with markers and add the colors to that. And then when I was finally done, I took this brush marker and I went back to do the outline to make that thicker sort of edge. So this is what I want to show you in today's activity. So I'm going to go over the supplies next, and then we're going to dive into another example of how to fill in your sketchbook page with a shape and some doodles. So now I'm going to walk through the basic supplies we need for today's activity. But I want to remind you that I did record a part 1, which was gathering your supplies and sort of getting the basics ready for your sketchbook art journey. I will link that in the description below, so you can definitely reference that for a deeper dive into the basic supplies that you need. But for this activity, the basics that you will need are a pencil, eraser, some fine liners, okay, and different sizes. The key thing about the fine liners, they need to be waterproof. So you want to make sure whatever fine liners you have, that they are waterproof. You need some watercolor paints. I like to use the tube paints, but you don't have to, right? You can just use pan paints as well. Any kind of watercolor paint you have is fine. And you will need some markers. I use a lot of the Tombow brush markers, but use any markers you have on hand. They can be Sharpies, they can be anything, or even if you have crayons or watercolor pencils, that if you add some water to it, you can blend it with the brush, that's fine too. We just want to use the markers for our doodle part of the activity, and the background will be painted with the watercolor paints. So then you would need a water container and a couple of brushes, paint brushes, and of course you need your sketchbook and just a blank, or you could use a watercolor paper as well. And then these are optional, but I always love to use my gold gel pen and my white gel pen after I have finished painting and adding all the doodles. Like these kind of add a little more texture and depth to my artwork. So these are optional, but if you get the gold and the white, those are great to add to your sketchbook supply stash. And then this is a waterproof brush pen. This is also optional, but this is great to sort of outline your shape at the very end when you're done, and it just gives a thicker line finishing to it. So I like to use this as well, but this is also optional. So basics are pencil, eraser, fine liners, markers, watercolor paints, watercolor or water container, and a couple of paint brushes. And those are the basics. So now let's dive into our activity. Okay, so we're going to actually sketch our shape in pencil first. So in your sketchbook, or if you're using just watercolor paper, that's also fine. But if you're using a sketchbook, that's great. So I normally like to put in like my 1/4 inch borders on the sides, which I've already drawn in with pencil. So just do that with your ruler, just draw a border. And then now you got to think of what's your shape. So again, it can be anything. You can start simple with just a square or a rectangle or a circle, anything. But for the purposes of showing you this activity, I'm good. My shape is going to be a tree. So I'm just going to draw a very loose tree. It's a very simple tree. Okay, and this is my basic shape. And now I'm going to take one of my fine liners. I'm probably going to use this 0.8 size. And I am now just going to outline this like that. And you know, if I don't go right over the pencil lines, that's fine. I'll go back and erase those pencil lines. Okay, so that is my basic shape, and then I'm going to just give it a minute to make sure the ink is all dry, and then I'm just going to erase my pencil lines. Okay, so I'm going to do one more step where I'm going to sort of mark in clusters or areas, and so I know like those areas are where I'm going to focus on different doodles, so something like that. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to mark these lines with my fine liner. Okay, and then I'm going to erase my pencil lines again. Okay, so now this is where the fun really begins. I'm just going to be using my pencil, and I am going to just start doodling inside each of these clusters. You know, again, whatever comes to mind without giving it a whole lot of thought, but just, again, it's not about stressing, it's right, it's about enjoying that creative process. So I'm just going to start to fill in things. I like to do shapes a lot, or lines. So my first little cluster of my tree is done with my doodles, and now I'm going to just do the same thing with the rest of the clusters, and I may be repeating some of these doodles, or I may be thinking of something different. Again, I'm just going to go with the flow and see what I come up with. So you can just watch the rest of the process. I'm going to speed it up, but you can just sort of watch the rest of the process. Okay, so here is my completed tree filled in with all my doodles, and it is now ready for color with watercolor and marker. So that is the next step, to fill in the tree with a background of watercolor paint, a light coating, and then using the markers for the doodles. Okay, so now I'm going to apply my watercolor to my entire tree, do sort of a light layering of watercolor, and then let that completely dry before coming back in to fill in the doodle. So I'm sticking to just 5 colors for my color palette. And again, you can use tube paints or pan paints, whatever you have. It doesn't matter what kind of paints, but just have some paints. So I'm gonna start by doing this light coat on the trunk of my tree. And I want the watercolor paints to bleed into each other, and you'll see that when I get to the tree part. So I'm gonna switch my color here. So I want to make the coat of paint light enough so that I can just still see my pencil doodles. So it's not going to be a very, dense color. It's going to be more on the transparent side. Okay, so here is my tree with the watercolor paint added. And now I'm going to wait a few minutes or maybe 30 minutes, and I want this to completely dry. So after it's dry, I'll come back and then we'll start to fill in the doodles. Okay, so the watercolor painted on my tree is now dry, and I'm ready to fill it in. So I'm going to be using a mix of brush markers. I've decided to limit my color palette to these 6 colors. I'll also be using the fine liners in some cases. And later, these are optional, but I will show you later how I use the gel pens, the gold and the white. So I'm just going to start to fill in my tree. So my basic tree is done. It's filled in with the doodles. And I ended up using a few more marker colors than what I originally said. I said I was going to stick to a color palette of 6 colors. I added a few more, and that's okay. That happens, right? Sometimes as you're getting into your art, you may change your plan a little bit, and that's totally cool. So now my basic tree is done, and if you're happy with the way yours look, just like this, then it's totally fine. But I do have one other optional step that I'll show you next that I do to sort of add some more interest in just embellishing my artwork a little bit more. So as my final step, just to add a little extra, I like to use this brush pen. It's waterproof, and I've already started doing it here, but I like to just add a thicker outline to my whole tree. So I will continue that in a minute. The other thing I like to do is use these gel pens like gold and white and add embellishments where I feel I want to. I think it just adds a little extra. It just gives it some, texture, depth, just a little bit more interest. So I'm going to finish doing that for the rest of this video, and it will be on it'll be on double speed, so you can watch and see what I'm doing. But this would be like my final finishing touches to this sketchbook art. Right, here is my finished tree after I embellished it with the gel pens. And, I just want to stress that this whole activity is supposed to be relaxing and enjoyable, and don't stress because you don't have to rush through this, right? You can start by just sketching your shape on one day if you have 10 minutes, and then the next day you could fill it in with the doodles, and then the third day you can add the color with the paint and the markers. So, the whole point again is just to enjoy the creative process, not focus so much on a specific outcome or rush through it. Like, don't feel you need to rush through it, because it may look like that as I'm recording this video. I'm doing a lot of things very quickly, but just know the whole point is for you to slow down, be mindful, right, about what you're doing, and just, it's a very meditative process. Just sort of enjoy the process. Another option you can do is paint the background of your tree, and then use a gel pen and just sort of, add sort of doodles to the background. So that's another way to finish your artwork in your sketchbook. Just another option, but again, all optional. You don't have to do this. Thanks so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed filling up your sketchbook page with just shapes and doodles and some color. And most importantly, I just really hope you enjoyed this process and found it very relaxing and meditative. So make sure you subscribe so that you know when my next video will be launched. And just keep creating, and I will see you again soon.